Potato Farm, and today we have my wife Julie.
Hi.
And she's going to help as I explain how to plant your seeds indoors so you get a good start to your plant's life. So, there's a lot of different ways you can start your garden. A lot of people just direct sow outside whenever the weather is good, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I've found is that if you start indoors, you can extend your growing season by several weeks. And in fact, in Oklahoma, you can extend it by almost a month on the beginning and potentially even more on the end. And the reason why is you get the seedlings have about 4 weeks of growth before you move them outside. And what that does is it lets you start them and gets them through their adolescence, if you will, and turn them into a good plant, a good sized plant. So when you move them outside, they don't have to do all that work of germination and getting started. April is the last frost date on average for Oklahoma, and so an actual plant, like a kale, can handle a little bit of light frost once it's a couple weeks old. But if it's just germinated and came through the surface and it gets a heavy frost, it could kill that plant pretty easily. They're a little bit more vulnerable. The other thing is that seeds take different ground temperatures to begin germination, right? So to wake them up from that hibernation. And so you can use what we have here, which you can see, which is a seed mat or a germination mat. And what that does is it's just a heating pad, right? And it heats up the soil so that the seeds will actually start germination and start growing. And once you kind of kick that natural process in and start it, the seeds will grow. So you just need the germination mat for a couple of days, and it depends on what you're growing. And then once the seedlings start, they're good with a little bit cooler temperatures. And in fact, you kind of want to cool down the temperature a little bit. Again, I encourage you to do some research, because depending on what you're growing, it would cause different needs for different temperatures. So anyway, lots more we can talk about with that, but let's get into planting. So you can look at some other videos that we have, and it'll kind of talk through soil selection and how you want to pick that soil. And we'll also talk through how you can get all the dirt in there and the soil ready to go for planting. So today we have a few different things that we're going to plant. So Julie, you want to walk them through what we got here?
Sure. We've got some spinach, kale, and cauliflower that we're going to be planting.
And some broccoli.
And some broccoli,
yeah.
Yes.
So what you want to do when you start, right, is you've got these things and you've lightly compacted the dirt and the soil inside here. So all you got to do is just go through, and you can use something like a pen or just your fingers or whatever, and you just want to put a little bitty dimple in the center of that pocket. So, and don't make it too deep, right? And every seed, every plant kind of needs a different depth, but in general, somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and lighter is all you need. The moisture is really what's going to cause that plant to start. Moisture and heat are gonna cause that seed to start growing. It's not really being covered by dirt that's going to do it. So you don't have to do much. You just want to get it kind of covered, protected from the elements a little bit, and that's all. So, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do some spinach. And what are you going to do?
I'm going to do some kale.
Great. So, and guys, also, we also talked through seed selection in another video. Really good video. I encourage you to check it out. It'll kind of walk you through the different types of seeds, what to look for, and also the different types of plants that you want to use. So
now, should you put just one seed in a hole, or can you put more than one?
So that's a great question, and honestly, it kind of depends on how you want to play the game. So a lot of people, to increase their chances, they'll plant a couple of seeds in each hole. And then after the seedlings have come through, they'll pluck out the weakest one. Sometimes people will leave them in depending on what they're growing. So if you're growing a bigger plant, something like a broccoli or cauliflower or Brussels sprouts, things like that, you definitely want to either plant one seed or pluck it out. If you plant one seed, you risk the chance that it won't germinate and grow, and then you have an empty square. For me, I've got plenty of planting trays. I just plant one seed, and if I don't have it, if it doesn't germinate, then I just have one that misses. I can always go and plant more later.
But if you fat finger and accidentally get more than one in there, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't really lose or sweat over getting more than one seed in there. In fact, I just did that on that one. Not a big deal. It'll be just fine.
So before you plant a new seed though, you want to stop and label so you don't forget if you planted cauliflower or spinach.
Yep.
So you can find lots of different labels that you can buy online that are wood, or you can buy some blank plastic ones, but if you certainly don't have to buy some. What we did today is just take some Post-it notes and some barbecue skewers, broke it in half so that we had some shorter labels. So what we did, instead of purchasing some plant markers, which I'm crafty, so I love those anyways, hashtag 2021 goals, we had some barbecue skewers.
Bamboo.
Sure. Laying around at home, and a Sharpie, and some Post-its. So we labeled those off, and just to make them shorter so that they weren't terribly tall, we broke them in half and just wrote them on here. So what you want to do is at your very first pod in the tray, just put it right at the beginning. Try to do it in the corner so you don't hurt where you just planted the seed. And then now it's easier to know once you pick up on your next one, which we're doing broccoli and cauliflower, we'll then put those there. So lots of options on how to label, but it is key because if you're starting to do multiple trays, you're going to forget what you planted.
Absolutely, and I'm guilty of that. The key to that too, why it's so important for those of you who are kind of new to this, is as these seedlings start to grow out of the ground, it's hard to tell what they are until they reach a certain level of maturity. And even then, if you're not super familiar with what plants look like, it may be all the way to the point where it starts to produce whatever it's going to produce, like broccoli or cauliflower, before you know what it is. And so it's always important to label and make sure you keep track of it so that you know what it is and you can keep things together. So critical.
Yeah. And then even when you transplant, you're going to want to think of something more permanent at that point. We got some where last year were plastic, and we wrote with a Sharpie on it, but the rain washed it away. So it took us a while to remember what we planted there. So something like wood plant markers will be really good once you transplant it out in the garden. Yeah,
and one of the things, while Julie's planting her last little bit, one of the things that I think is important about growing is, first off, to be humble and realize that you're gonna make mistakes sometimes. We've been doing this for a few years now, and when I was a kid, we had a garden with my parents. I learned something new every year. The whole comment about, well, we had this great idea. We went out and bought these really nice plastic labels, and we went and got our Sharpie and we wrote on there and we put it out in the garden. We were really excited. And then after the first rain and a little bit of sun, we went out there and it had all washed off. So luckily we had a decent idea of what we put where, but there was some stuff that we were kind of just waiting until it grew to find out what it was. So always label and transplant those labels to a weatherproof label when you get outside. So the last step in planting is just to lightly cover all the seeds. So you have those little holes that you poked in there, you've got your seeds in there, and so all you do is just go through and just lightly brush a little bit of soil over those seeds. And it doesn't need to be a lot. You don't need to worry about fully covering them. And in fact, the honest truth is that in a lot of cases, you don't even have to cover and that seed will start. You really want to, just to give it a little bit of protection. It helps to retain the moisture around the seed so that that seed starts to wake up and actually start to grow into a little bitty plant. But, like I've said before, gardening is a pretty forgiving thing, right? So you don't have to be perfect. You just need to get close. And then kind of take notes, remember what worked well and what didn't, and do it better the next time. So that concludes our video for the week. As always, go like, subscribe. You can find us on OK to Farm on Facebook and YouTube. Check us out, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for your help, Julie.
Yeah, bye.